Police lights flash against darkened windows. Officers surround a suburban home, hands hovering over holsters. A black family stands on their own manicured lawn, hands raised. Andrea Reynolds steps forward, her voice steady despite the tension radiating through her body. "Why are we being detained on our own property?" she asks, maintaining eye contact with the lead officer. The officer shifts uncomfortably. "Ma'am, we received a call about suspicious individuals possibly breaking into this residence." 10-year-old Olivia tugs at her father's shirt, voice barely a whisper. "Daddy, why do they think we're robbers? This is our house." Thomas Reynolds maintains perfect composure, shoulders squared, but his eyes find and lock with the neighbor across the street, a white woman filming the entire encounter on her phone. Little did the neighbor know she'd just called 911 on the city's new head of law enforcement. The Reynolds family pulls into the driveway of their new home in Oakwood Estates 3 days earlier. Thomas maneuvers their SUV past the ornate stone entrance of the gated community, where manicured lawns stretch before colonial-style homes with perfect symmetry. "We're home," Thomas announces, purposely dressed down in worn jeans and a plain navy t-shirt, saving his professional attire for Monday's official department introduction. 14-year-old Devin jumps out first. "This place is massive!" His basketball tucked under his arm, eyes already scanning for the nearest hoop. Andrea steps out, adjusting her silk blouse. "Remember, we're still unpacking tonight. No disappearing to explore just yet." Olivia exits last, clutching her beloved chemistry book. "Can I at least see my room first?" Across the street, Patricia Whitfield parts her living room curtains just enough to observe the new arrivals. Her thin lips press together as she watches the black family unload expensive items, a large flat-screen TV, framed artwork, designer furniture pieces that match the upscale neighborhood's aesthetic. Patricia spots her neighbor, Frank Cooper, retrieving his mail. She hastily exits her front door, beckoning him over. "Did you hear about the new people?" Patricia nods toward the Reynolds house. "They don't seem to fit the neighborhood profile." Frank shifts uncomfortably. "They bought the Hamiltons' old place. Paid cash, from what I heard." Patricia's eyebrows rise dramatically. "Where would they get that kind of money?" The implication hangs in the air. Frank clears his throat but doesn't correct her assumption. Inside their new home, Andrea unpacks family photos. Thomas in uniform at various ceremonies, shaking hands with the mayor, receiving commendations, but keeps them in boxes for now. Through the open window, Thomas catches fragments of the neighbor's conversation. He says nothing, but his eyes meet Andrea's in silent understanding. The children race through the backyard, claiming territory and planning adventures, unaware of the watchful eyes from surrounding homes. What Patricia doesn't realize is that her new neighbors have heard every word through the open window. The next day brings blazing summer heat. The Reynolds family decides to explore the community pool, a crystalline oasis nestled between tennis courts and a clubhouse. Devin and Olivia immediately dive in, their laughter joining the chorus of splashing children. Thomas and Andrea set up chairs on the pool deck, spreading towels and unpacking a small cooler. Patricia approaches with determined strides, designer sunglasses perched on her head, phone clutched in manicured fingers. She scans the family with barely concealed suspicion. "Excuse me," she begins, voice syrupy with artificial pleasantness. "Are you visiting someone in the neighborhood?" Andrea straightens, smile cooling. "No, we moved in yesterday. The house on Maple Drive." Patricia's smile doesn't reach her eyes. "Well, this pool is for residents only. We've had problems with outsiders." She emphasizes the last word slightly. Thomas rises slowly, extending his hand. "Thomas Reynolds. We purchased the Hamilton house." His voice carries the calm authority that has defined his career, though Patricia doesn't recognize it for what it is. "I don't believe I've seen your pool passes," Patricia continues, ignoring his outstretched hand. "We weren't issued any yet," Andrea explains. "We just completed the closing yesterday." Patricia pulls out her phone. "Let me take your photos for the neighborhood directory." Without waiting for permission, She snaps pictures of the family, just to make sure everything's in order. Thomas notes that none of the White families lounging nearby have been approached about their residency status or photographed. As Patricia types on her phone, Thomas glimpses her message. Need to alert neighborhood watch. New black family at Hamilton House. Seem nice enough, but we should be cautious. Frank appears, slightly out of breath, as if he'd hurried over. Patricia, I see you've met our new neighbors. He offers Thomas an awkward handshake. Welcome to Oakwood Estates. Patricia allows herself to be guided away, but not before giving the family one last scrutinizing look. Should we go? Andrea whispers to Thomas. No, he answers quietly. We belong here as much as anyone. He watches Patricia huddled with Frank, considering whether to reveal his position but deciding against it. Let things play out naturally first. As they left the pool, Thomas didn't know the photos Patricia took weren't for any directory. They were already being circulated in the neighborhood watch group with a warning. 3 days pass in a flurry of unpacking. Thomas converts the home office into his temporary workspace, police reform documents and legal briefs carefully arranged but not prominently displayed. A photo of him with the mayor sits face down in a drawer, waiting for Monday. The afternoon sun blazes as a delivery truck rumbles up the driveway. 2 movers step out, checking their clipboard before approaching the front door. Reynolds' residence? The lead mover confirms when Thomas answers. That's right. Thomas holds the door open. The sectional goes in the living room, credenza against the far wall. Thomas directs the placement of each expensive piece: Italian leather furniture, handcrafted oak dining table, custom bookshelves for Andrea's medical journals. Professional success has afforded them nice things, each item chosen with care. Patricia walks by with her poodle, slowing deliberately. She watches the movers carry in a glass-topped coffee table, her phone raised to capture the scene. Thomas notices but continues his work. Evening arrives. The Reynolds family returns from dinner at a local restaurant. Olivia chattering about starting at her new school, when they turn onto their street and fall silent. 2 police cruisers sit outside their home, lights flashing. Thomas parks in the driveway. Stay calm, he instructs his family quietly. Follow my lead. They exit the car as 2 officers approach, hands resting near their holsters. Good evening, the first officer says. We received a call about suspicious activity at this address. Thomas keeps his voice steady. This is our home. We moved in earlier this week. We've had reports of unknown individuals moving expensive items into the house, the second officer explains, eyes scanning the family with barely concealed suspicion. Andrea reaches for her phone. I'm going to record this interaction, she states calmly. Ma'am, that's your right, the first officer acknowledges, shifting uncomfortably. May I ask what prompted this call? Thomas inquires, though he already knows. A concerned neighbor reported possible break-in activity. The officer gestures toward the house. We'll need to verify your residence. For the next 15 minutes, under the watchful eyes of neighbors who have emerged onto their porches, Thomas must produce identification, answer questions about the home's interior, and describe possessions visible through the windows. All while his children watch, learning a lesson about being black in America that no parent wants to teach. Andrea's phone captures it all, her hand trembling slightly with controlled rage. Sorry for the misunderstanding, the first officer finally says, clearly recognizing the situation for what it is. Looks like everything checks out. Across the street, Patricia watches through binoculars, phone still in hand. Inside, once the police leave, Olivia's composure crumbles. Why did they think we were stealing from ourselves? Tears streak her cheeks. Thomas gathers his children close, exchanging a meaningful look with Andrea over their heads. This neighborhood has just become something more than a home. It's become a test case. Thomas closed the blinds, picked up his phone, and made a call that would change everything. Chief Williams? We need to talk about what just happened in my new neighborhood. The house falls quiet around midnight. Thomas sits in his office, the blue light of his laptop illuminating his face as he reviews the footage Andrea captured. The officer's body language, their hesitation, the coded language of suspicious activity. He's seen it all before, but now it's personal. The video ends. Thomas leans back, memories surfacing unbidden. Being pulled over 3 times in 1 week driving his first BMW. Security following him through department stores despite his tailored suits. A woman clutching her purse when he entered an elevator, despite his Harvard Law sweatshirt. He opens a folder on his laptop labeled Commissioner Transition and clicks through his career milestones. Law degree with honors, civil rights specialization, decorated officer, rapid rise through detective ranks, selection for leadership track, and finally, the email confirming his appointment as Charlotte's new police commissioner. Thomas dials a number, the call connecting after 2 rings. "Williams here," answers the retiring commissioner, his mentor of 20 years. "It's Thomas. Sorry for the late call." "What's wrong? You sound tense." Thomas explains the evening's events methodically, professionally, as if reporting a case rather than his family's humiliation. "Jesus, Thomas." Williams sighs heavily. "Welcome to the neighborhood." "The press conference announcing my appointment is scheduled for Monday morning," Thomas says. "I'd like to delay the public announcement." "Any particular reason?" "I want to document the pattern here without my title preceding me. This neighborhood is giving me a real-time case study in biased policing." "You're not just looking for payback against some racist neighbor?" "This isn't about revenge," Thomas says firmly. "It's about reform. Real change requires evidence." The door opens and Andrea enters, worry etched across her face. Thomas puts the call on speaker. "Devin is talking about not wanting to live here anymore," she says quietly. Thomas shows her his screen, a document he's been drafting titled Reforming Response Protocols, Case Study in Bias-Based Calls. He scrolls to reveal detailed plans for department-wide training using their own experience as example. Andrea's eyes widen with understanding. "So instead of just calling them out, you're building a case for systemic change?" "Exactly. This isn't just about us or this neighborhood. It's about changing how policing works for everyone." Commissioner Williams clears his throat on the speaker. "I'll delay the public announcement until Monday afternoon. That gives you 3 more days." After ending the call, Thomas drafts a secure email to Internal Affairs. "Please preserve the 911 call recording and officer body cam footage from case number J7729. This will be needed for departmental training purposes." Andrea touches his shoulder. "We're documenting everything?" Thomas nods. Everything. What Thomas didn't know was that Patricia had already organized an emergency neighborhood watch meeting about the security concerns their new neighbors presented. The next afternoon brings suffocating humidity. Devin sets up a portable basketball hoop in the driveway, desperate for normalcy in this new environment. The rhythmic bounce of the ball against concrete creates a soothing backdrop to the day. Thomas watches from his office window, alternating between monitoring his son and reviewing department policies on responding to suspicious person calls. Each document reveals gaps in training, opportunities for improvement. Devin's jump shot misses the backboard entirely. The ball bounces across the property line, rolling into Patricia's meticulously maintained flower bed. "Sorry," Devin calls out, jogging over to retrieve it. Patricia emerges from her front door before he reaches the ball. She stands over it, arms crossed, expression pinched. "That's the 3rd time your ball has landed in my flowers," she snaps, though it's actually the 1st. "I'm really sorry, ma'am." Devin reaches for the ball. Patricia steps forward, blocking his access. "You people need to learn some respect for other people's property." Devin freezes, confusion washing over his face. "You people? I'm just getting my ball, ma'am." Patricia pulls out her phone. "If this happens again, I'm calling security. This is a quiet neighborhood." She takes a photo of Devin standing there, uncomfortable and confused. Thomas sees the interaction unfold and moves swiftly through the house and outside. By the time he reaches the driveway, his expression is carefully neutral. "Is there a problem?" he asks calmly. Patricia's demeanor shifts instantly, artificial pleasantness replacing hostility. "Just a little misunderstanding about property boundaries." Her smile never reaches her eyes. "Children need to learn proper boundaries, don't they?" Thomas notices Frank watching uncomfortably from his porch across the street, silent and unmoving. "I'm Thomas Reynolds," he says, extending his hand. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced." Patricia hesitantly accepts the handshake. "Patricia Whitfield. Welcome to the neighborhood." Her voice strains around the welcome. After she retreats to her house, Thomas picks up the basketball and walks with his son back to their driveway. "Dad," Devin says quietly, "she called us you people." Thomas places both hands on his son's shoulders. "I heard." "What am I supposed to do when people talk to me like that?" Thomas considers his answer carefully. "You maintain your dignity. You recognize their words reveal their character, not yours. And you remember that change doesn't come from matching hatred with hatred." Devin nods, but his shoulders remain tight. "Is this why we moved here? To teach them a lesson?" "No," Thomas says. "We moved here because it's a good neighborhood with good schools. We belong here. Never forget that." As they talked, Thomas didn't see Patricia sending the photos of Devin to the neighborhood watch group with a message, "Urgent meeting needed. Potential vandalism situation developing with new residents." The weekend brings a community barbecue at the clubhouse, an event Thomas learns about from a flyer left in their mailbox. "Perfect opportunity to meet everyone," Andrea suggests, though her tone holds reservation. The Reynolds family arrives to find the clubhouse patio transformed. Balloons flutter from pergolas, grills sizzle with burgers and hot dogs, and children splash in the adjacent pool. A classic American summer scene, except for the subtle wave of silence that follows their entrance. Thomas feels dozens of eyes tracking their movement through the crowd. Andrea grips his arm slightly tighter, her surgeon's hands steady despite the tension. Olivia spots a group of girls around her age near the punch bowl. "Can I go say hi?" she asks. "Of course," Andrea encourages. "Be yourself." They watch as Olivia approaches with a bright smile. The girls glance at her, then at each other before shifting their circle closed. A subtle movement, perhaps unintentional, but its effect is unmistakable. Olivia stands there momentarily before retreating to the food table alone. Andrea's jaw tightens. "I'll get us some drinks," she says, moving toward a less crowded area. As she waits in line, she overhears snippets of conversation from two women behind her. "Going to affect property values," one whispers. "Changing the neighborhood character," the other agrees. Patricia says they're just the beginning. Thomas, meanwhile, notices several residents discreetly photographing his family and texting. One phone screen clearly displays their images being added to what appears to be a group chat. Frank approaches, plate in hand, smile strained. "Glad you could make it," he says, extending his free hand to Thomas. "How are you settling in?" "We're adjusting," Thomas replies evenly, "though I understand there are some concerns about security in the neighborhood." Frank's eyes dart nervously to where Patricia stands with a cluster of residents, all watching the interaction. "Patricia can be a bit zealous about the neighborhood watch," he admits quietly. "Are these concerns about security?" Thomas asks directly. "Or about us being black?" Frank nearly chokes on his drink. No. It's just, you have to understand, this community has certain standards." Andrea rejoins them, catching the last comment. "Standards?" Her voice carries the precision of her surgical training. "My husband and I both hold doctoral degrees. I'm chief of pediatric surgery at Charlotte Memorial. What standards exactly are we failing to meet?" "I didn't mean," Frank stammers. "We passed the same financial requirements as everyone else to purchase our home," Thomas adds calmly. Frank looks genuinely embarrassed. "Look, I'll talk to Patricia. Smooth things over. Not everyone feels the way she does." "But they listen to her," Andrea observes. She's been here the longest, Frank explains, as if longevity justifies prejudice. 20 minutes later, after Devon reports being asked if he's visiting someone by a teenage boy, the Reynolds family makes their exit. In the car, both children are uncharacteristically quiet. "Is it always going to be like this?" Olivia finally asks, her voice small. Thomas meets her eyes in the rearview mirror. "No," he promises. "It's not." That night, a printed notice appeared on their doorstep about neighborhood watch guidelines, with Patricia's name and number listed as the main contact. Sunday morning sunlight filters through the kitchen blinds as Thomas examines the neighborhood watch notice. The document outlines suspicious behaviors to report, with items like unfamiliar people moving expensive items and teenagers loitering without clear purpose, highlighted in bold. Patricia's contact information dominates the bottom, alongside her title, Neighborhood Watch Coordinator. Bah. "This is targeted harassment," Andrea says, pouring coffee with controlled precision. "We need to confront her directly." Devon flips the paper over. "She basically created a how-to guide for calling the cops on us." Thomas places the notice in a folder labeled Documentation that grows thicker by the day. "By tomorrow afternoon, everything changes," he reminds them. "Let's not escalate prematurely." The doorbell rings. Thomas checks the security camera on his phone, then raises an eyebrow at Andrea. Speaking of Patricia, he opens the door to find Patricia flanked by two neighbors, a tall man with a military haircut and a woman clutching a tablet. All three wear matching navy blue polo shirts with Oakwood Estates Neighborhood Watch embroidered on the pocket. "Good morning," Patricia begins, smile tight. "We're making our rounds to introduce new residents to our security protocols." Thomas steps back. "Please, come in." His tone remains professionally cordial as he activates the recording app on his phone discreetly. The trio enters, Patricia's eyes scanning every visible item in the living room. "Beautiful home," she says with rehearsed pleasantness. "You've made interesting choices with the decor." Thomas gestures to the sofa. "Would you like to explain these security protocols?" Patricia launches into a practiced speech about their very thorough neighborhood protection system, emphasizing the importance of reporting anything unusual. "We just want to ensure our community remains safe," she concludes. "I'm sure you understand how important that is in a premium neighborhood like this." "I'm quite familiar with security procedures," Thomas responds calmly. "In fact, I noticed several problems with your approach. For instance, your criteria for suspicious behavior seems remarkably subjective." Patricia blinks, momentarily thrown. "Well, we've developed these guidelines over years." "Without input from law enforcement professionals," Thomas interjects. "For example, photographing minors without parental consent and distributing those images could potentially violate privacy laws." The male neighbor shifts uncomfortably. "Patricia, maybe we should—" "Furthermore," Thomas continues, "organizing responses to perceived threats without proper training can create dangerous situations. Have your volunteers received conflict resolution training? De-escalation techniques?" Patricia's composure cracks slightly. "We don't need special training to recognize when people don't belong." She catches herself, but too late. "Don't belong?" Thomas repeats softly. "Based on what criteria exactly?" Patricia's face flushes. "I simply meant when activities seem suspicious." "Like moving furniture into a home you've purchased?" Andrea asks from the doorway. "Or children playing basketball?" Patricia stands abruptly. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in a different community, one less security conscious." "I'll be addressing these concerns through the proper channels tomorrow," Thomas says, his calm unbroken. Patricia interprets his response as submission, her posture relaxing as she leads her companions to the door. "We'll be watching," she says, attempting to sound helpful rather than threatening. After they leave, Thomas's phone buzzes with a text from Commissioner Williams. Press conference confirmed for 11 a.m. tomorrow. Department-wide email announcing your appointment scheduled for 10:45. Thomas shows Andrea the message, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. As Patricia walked away victorious, she had no idea that in less than 24 hours, she would be explaining her actions not just to a neighbor, but to the city's entire police leadership. Monday morning dawns with promise. Thomas stands before the bedroom mirror, straightening the gold commissioner's badge on his crisp uniform. Each button and insignia represents years of work, sacrifice, and determination. His reflection shows not just a man in uniform, but a vision for what policing could be. Andrea approaches from behind, adjusting his collar with the same precise movements she uses in surgery. "Perfect," she whispers, eyes meeting his in the mirror. Olivia and Devin appear in the doorway, still in pajamas despite the hour. "You look like a superhero, Dad," Olivia says, eyes wide. Thomas turns to his children. "Remember, this isn't about revenge. It's about accountability and change." "Will they show it on TV?" Devin asks. "Live coverage," Thomas confirms. "Every station in Charlotte." Andrea checks her watch. "They'll be announcing your appointment in 15 minutes. The email goes department-wide." Thomas kisses each family member goodbye. At the door, he pauses, giving Andrea a meaningful nod. "Everything ready?" She smiles. Operation Neighborhood Welcome is set for 11:30. The drive to police headquarters passes through increasingly formal security checkpoints. Officers snap to attention as Thomas enters, whispers following in his wake. Most know him as Deputy Commissioner Reynolds. By noon, the world will know him as Charlotte's new head of law enforcement. In the preparation room, Commissioner Williams waits with the mayor and city council members. "Ready to make history?" Williams asks, shaking Thomas's hand. "Ready to make change," Thomas corrects. Meanwhile, Andrea moves through their kitchen with efficiency, arranging pastries on trays and programming the coffee maker. The doorbell rings at precisely 11:15. Frank arrives first, looking nervous. "I got your invitation," he says, holding up her text message. "Coffee with new neighbors?" "Come in," Andrea welcomes him warmly. "Others should be arriving shortly." Within 15 minutes, the living room fills with curious neighbors, some from the barbecue, others Andrea hasn't met yet. Patricia arrives last, her expression shifting from suspicion to confusion at finding so many neighbors already comfortably seated. "What's this about?" Patricia asks, declining a coffee mug. "Just thought it was time to properly introduce ourselves," Andrea replies, checking her watch. "Actually, perfect timing. May I turn on the TV? There's something I'd like everyone to see." Before Patricia can object, Andrea activates the large screen dominating the living room wall. The local news appears, cameras focused on a podium bearing the Charlotte Police Department seal. The mayor approaches the microphone. "Today marks a significant step forward for our city's future. It is my honor to introduce Charlotte's new police commissioner, a man whose distinguished career and vision will transform public safety in our community. Please welcome Commissioner Dr. Thomas Reynolds." The camera pans to Thomas, resplendent in his full dress uniform, as he steps to the podium. Gasps echo through the Reynolds living room. Frank's coffee cup freezes halfway to his lips. Patricia's face drains of color as recognition dawns. "That's your husband?" she manages, voice barely audible. Andrea simply nods, turning up the volume. On screen, Thomas speaks with measured authority. "I am deeply honored to accept this responsibility. With 20 years of distinguished service and a Harvard Law degree specializing in civil rights, I bring to this department not just experience, but vision." The camera captures his commanding presence as he continues. "To truly serve and protect, we must recognize that safety means everyone feels secure, not just from crime, but from being criminalized for simply existing in their own neighborhoods. Patricia sinks into the nearest chair, neighbors subtly shifting away from her. Thomas outlines his immediate priorities. Starting today, our department will implement new protocols for evaluating and responding to suspicious person calls. Officers will be trained to recognize and mitigate bias in these situations. He describes initiatives for community engagement, accountability, and transparency, each point landing like a hammer in the suddenly silent living room. Every citizen deserves equal protection under the law, Thomas concludes. Every neighborhood deserves professional policing based on behavior, not bias, and every officer deserves the training to serve with true integrity. As applause erupts on screen, Andrea turns to the stunned Patricia. My husband wanted me to personally invite you to his community relations initiative launching next week. Her smile remains pleasant, professional. He said your calls were instructive. Frank and several neighbors stand, making awkward excuses to leave, their body language clearly distancing themselves from Patricia, who remains frozen in disbelief. You knew, Patricia finally whispers. All this time, you knew who you were calling the police on. No, Andrea corrects. All this time, you knew exactly who you were calling the police on. A family in their own home. You just didn't know the consequences. As Patricia stumbled out of the Reynolds home in shock, her phone buzzed with a notification. An official email from the commissioner's office requesting a meeting regarding recent neighborhood security concerns. The conference room at police headquarters falls silent as Thomas concludes playing the body camera footage. The wall-mounted screen freezes on the final frame, the Reynolds family standing on their own lawn, being questioned about their right to be there. 12 commanding officers shift uncomfortably in their seats. These are Thomas's leadership team now, captains, lieutenants, and precinct commanders who will implement his vision across Charlotte. Questions? Thomas asks, his voice level. Captain Rivera speaks first. Those officers followed current protocol for responding to suspicious person calls. Exactly, Thomas agrees. That's the problem. He brings up a PowerPoint slide showing statistics. 78% of suspicious person calls in predominantly white neighborhoods involve people of color. 65% of those calls result in no evidence of criminal activity. This isn't about individual officers making bad decisions, Thomas explains. It's about systems that direct good officers toward biased outcomes. Starting today, we implement new protocols. Thomas outlines the changes. Dispatchers will request specific suspicious behaviors, not just appearances. Responding officers will approach with conversation, not confrontation. Body camera footage will be regularly reviewed for training purposes. The officers who responded to my home will not face disciplinary action, Thomas announces. Instead, they'll help develop our new training program. They experienced this situation firsthand. Their perspective is valuable. Lieutenant Garcia raises her hand. Sir, with respect, some officers may resist these changes. Thomas nods. Change is always difficult. But we're not serving our community by maintaining systems that create different experiences of policing based on skin color or zip code. By meeting's end, implementation teams form, timelines establish, and a department-wide message drafts. This isn't just about one incident or one neighborhood, it's about transforming an entire system. Across town, an emergency neighborhood meeting convenes in the Oakwood Estates clubhouse. Residents pack the room, voices overlapping in agitated discussion until Frank calls for order. Let's address the situation directly, Frank begins, uncomfortable in his impromptu leadership role. Patricia, do you realize you called the police on the police commissioner? On his own property? All eyes turn to Patricia, who sits rigid in the front row. How was I supposed to know? She demands defensively. They didn't look like they belonged here. A murmur ripples through the crowd. Frank seizes the moment. And what exactly does belonging here look like, Patricia? The question hangs in the air, forcing everyone to confront the uncomfortable truth beneath the surface. Patricia's posture remains defiant. I was acting in the neighborhood's best interest. A woman stands from the back row.
My husband is Nigerian. I'm Korean. Do we look like we belong to you? Because our closing is next week. Another resident speaks up. My parents are visiting from Puerto Rico next month. Should they expect police questioning too? The conversation shifts, revealing simmering concerns from residents of color who felt Patricia's scrutiny but never spoke up. Frank projects statistics on the wall: neighborhood property values, security incident reports, community satisfaction surveys. There's no evidence that Patricia's approach to security has benefited our community. There is, however, growing evidence that it's creating liability. A real estate agent in attendance confirms, "We're already getting calls about the police incident involving our community. This kind of publicity affects everyone's property values." Andrea enters quietly, taking a seat at the back. Her presence ripples through the room in whispers. Frank acknowledges her. "Dr. Reynolds, would you like to address the group?" Andrea approaches the front, tablet in hand. "I'm not here to embarrass anyone," she begins, "but I do think we should acknowledge the pattern." She presents a timeline of documented incidents: Patricia's reports on Latino landscapers, suspicious individuals loitering, Asian delivery drivers, unknown vehicle circling, black teenagers walking through the neighborhood, possible gang activity. "My family's experience wasn't isolated," Andrea concludes. "It was predictable." Patricia stands, face flushed. "I was just trying to keep our neighborhood safe." "Safe for whom?" Andrea asks quietly. "And from what exactly? Families like mine?" The room falls silent. Frank clears his throat. "I move that we formally remove Patricia from the Neighborhood Watch Coordinator position and issue an official apology to the Reynolds family." The vote isn't close. As the meeting disperses, Patricia finds herself standing alone, former allies now keeping careful distance. Back at police headquarters, Thomas initiates a department-wide audit of past suspicious person calls. The data reveals disturbing patterns. Response times vary by neighborhood demographics. Questioning techniques escalate differently depending on subject's race. Follow-up investigations show statistical disparities. Thomas stands at his office window overlooking Charlotte's skyline. The city's promise and problems spread before him, both now his responsibility. His phone buzzes with a text from Andrea. "Neighborhood meeting complete. Change beginning." He types back, "Same here. This is just the start." The next morning, Patricia's phone rang. Caller ID showing Charlotte Police Department, Office of Internal Affairs. Patricia perches uncomfortably on the edge of her chair in interview room B at police headquarters. The room's utilitarian design, gray walls, simple table, recording equipment in plain view, contrasts sharply with her carefully coordinated outfit and jewelry. She's dressed for an important meeting, not understanding this is closer to a deposition. Two officers sit across from her, a black woman with lieutenant's bars and an Asian man in plain clothes with a detective's badge. Between them rests a thick folder labeled Whitfield P. "Thank you for coming in, Ms. Whitfield," the lieutenant begins. "I'm Lieutenant Washington, Internal Affairs. This is Detective Suarez. We're investigating a pattern of potentially false police reports originating from your neighborhood." Patricia straightens her spine. "I was told this was about neighborhood watch coordination." "In a manner of speaking," Detective Suarez says, opening the folder. "You've made 17 calls to police in the past 8 months. He slides forward a document listing dates, times, and brief descriptions. Patricia scans it, recognizing her reports. "I was just being vigilant," she insists. "Isn't that what Neighborhood Watch is supposed to do?" Lieutenant Washington leans forward. "Filing false police reports is a serious matter, Ms. Whitfield. Each call diverts resources from genuine emergencies and puts innocent people at risk." "They weren't false reports," Patricia protests. "I reported suspicious activities." "Let's examine that," Suarez suggests, activating the room's monitor. Surveillance footage appears, security cameras from neighborhood entry points and traffic cams. The compilation shows Patricia photographing various individuals, landscapers eating lunch in their truck,
A food delivery driver checking addresses, teenagers walking home from school, and finally, the Reynolds family unloading their possessions. Following these documented observations, Washington continues, you made calls reporting suspicious activities. In each case, responding officers found only people engaged in ordinary, legal activities. The screen shifts to Patricia's social media history, posts about maintaining neighborhood character and preserving community values, with coded language that takes on new meaning in context. This pattern suggests you weren't reporting suspicious behavior, Suarez explains. You were reporting suspicious existence. Patricia's confidence falters. You're twisting everything. I was protecting my community. From what exactly? Washington asks. Because our investigation shows you primarily reported people of color engaged in everyday activities. Patricia's eyes dart between them. Am I being charged with something? You could be, Washington acknowledges. Multiple counts of filing false reports, misuse of emergency services, harassment. Patricia's face drains of color. However, Suarez interjects, Commissioner Reynolds has suggested an alternative approach. The door opens and an officer brings in a document. Washington reviews it before sliding it across to Patricia. This is a diversion agreement, she explains. Instead of criminal charges, you'd complete a comprehensive bias training program and perform community service with our neighborhood integration initiative. Patricia stares at the paper. Commissioner Reynolds arranged this? Washington nods. He sent a message for you. This isn't about punishment. It's about education and growth. Patricia's hand trembles slightly as she reads the agreement's terms. Why would he do this? She whispers, more to herself than the officers. Perhaps because his job is to make the community safer, Suarez suggests. For everyone. Patricia signs the document, her signature shaky but legible. By evening, local news stations run the story. Neighborhood Watch Coordinator faces consequences for biased police reports. Social media explodes with video clips of the Reynolds family being questioned outside their home, Patricia's face clearly visible across the street. She becomes the latest symbol of Karen behavior, her name trending alongside hashtags about privilege and accountability. Her real estate office places her on administrative leave pending completion of sensitivity training, citing conduct inconsistent with our commitment to fair housing practices. Patricia sits alone in her living room, curtains drawn, watching her reputation unravel in real time on the very social platforms she once used to coordinate neighborhood security. The protective bubble of her assumptions has burst, exposing her to consequences she never imagined. 6 weeks later, Patricia stood nervously at the community center podium, facing a room full of the very people she had once considered suspicious. 1 month transforms the Charlotte Police Department. Commissioner Reynolds' office hums with activity as implementation teams develop new protocols, training materials, and accountability measures. Thomas stands before a whiteboard covered with flowcharts, addressing a mixed group of officers and civilian consultants. Dispatch will now use this structured assessment tool for all suspicious person calls, he explains, highlighting a decision tree. Callers must articulate specific behaviors that appear suspicious, not just appearances. The new protocol requires dispatchers to ask clarifying questions. What specifically is the person doing that concerns you? And, would this behavior seem suspicious regardless of who was doing it? Responses get coded and tracked, creating data on potentially biased reporting. Officers undergo enhanced training using body camera footage from actual incidents, including the Reynolds case study, to identify opportunities for de-escalation and bias recognition. Role-playing scenarios place officers in the position of being questioned about their right to exist in spaces, creating first-hand empathy for the experience. Thomas partners with sociology professors from Charlotte University to analyze patterns in 911 calls, correlating reports with demographic data and outcomes. The preliminary findings confirm what many already knew intuitively. Neighborhoods become less safe when residents fear both crime and criminalization.
Community listening sessions establish in neighborhoods with histories of biased reporting. Residents share experiences of being treated as suspicious while walking dogs, jogging, or simply existing in their own communities. These testimonials become powerful teaching tools, humanizing statistics and changing perspectives. The ripple effect extends beyond policing. The Charlotte Real Estate Association adopts new anti-discrimination training requirements for all agents. HOA management companies implement bias review processes for security complaints. Neighborhood watch programs across the city reorganize under new guidelines emphasizing behavior-based vigilance rather than appearance-based suspicion. Within weeks, statistics show a measurable decrease in unwarranted suspicious person calls, while reports of actual criminal behavior remain consistent. Resources previously wasted on investigating innocent residents redirect toward genuine community needs. Local news stations interview Thomas on the precinct steps. "We're seeing progress," he explains to cameras, "but this is ongoing work. Every community member deserves to feel safe and welcome in their own neighborhood." The program gains attention. Police departments from neighboring counties request briefings on the new protocols. The State Police Academy incorporates elements of the training into its curriculum. What began as one family's humiliation transforms into a template for systemic improvement. Meanwhile, Patricia completes the first phase of her bias training, attending workshops alongside others referred through similar incidents. Initially resistant, she gradually engages with the material, confronting uncomfortable truths about her assumptions and their impacts. Her community service assignment places her with the Neighborhood Welcome Committee, helping introduce new families to the area, particularly those who might face integration challenges. Each interaction chips away at her preconceptions. Frank leads the Oakwood Estates Neighborhood Initiative, hosting monthly diversity discussions and establishing a proper introduction protocol for new residents. "We're building community through connection, not suspicion," he explains at a community meeting. Across Charlotte, conversations shift, awareness grows, and small changes accumulate into meaningful progress. As the Reynolds family prepared for their neighborhood block party, they wondered if Patricia would actually show up as promised, and what she might say after everything that happened. 3 months after moving in, the Reynolds family hosts a neighborhood block party. Their driveway transforms into a central hub with tables of food, coolers of drinks, and strings of lights creating a warm atmosphere against the early evening sky. Children race across interconnected lawns, neighborhood boundaries temporarily forgotten in play. Olivia leads younger kids in science experiments, creating erupting volcanoes from household ingredients to delighted squeals. Devin organizes a basketball game with neighborhood teens, including Frank's son, competitive spirit bringing them together across previous divides. Thomas mans the grill, exchanging recipes and stories with neighbors who weeks earlier watched in silence as officers questioned his family's right to exist in this space. Andrea moves through the gathering, her natural warmth drawing out conversations, learning names, building connections. The community has changed. Not completely, not perfectly, but noticeably. New families, a Vietnamese couple, an interracial family with twins, a single mother from El Salvador, receive welcomes rather than suspicion. The Neighborhood Watch still operates, but with Frank's leadership focusing on actual safety concerns. Speeding cars, broken streetlights, proper pool supervision for children. Patricia arrives later than most, nervousness evident in her careful movements. She carries a homemade dish, a peace offering of sorts. She stands at the edge of the gathering, uncertain of her welcome until Andrea approaches. "I'm glad you came," Andrea says, accepting the dish. Patricia hesitates. "I've been wanting to say this in person. I'm truly sorry." "Actions speak louder than words," Andrea responds. "We're seeing yours change, and that matters." Thomas joins them, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Patricia meets his gaze directly for the first time. "Commissioner Reynolds," she begins formally, "I want to apologize to you as well." Thomas nods. "Thank you." "The training program.
Patricia continues, searching for words. It's been eye-opening. I never saw myself as prejudiced, but I've had to face some hard truths. That's all any of us can do, Thomas responds. Recognize our biases and work to overcome them. A moment of understanding passes between them. Not friendship, exactly, but a recognition of shared humanity and the possibility of growth. The conversation shifts as others join them. Patricia mentions her new volunteer work with the Community Integration Program, helping welcome families who might face challenges similar to what the Reynolds experienced. Later, Thomas sits on the porch swing with Andrea, watching the neighborhood blend and connect under the summer stars. Deputy Commissioner called today, he tells her quietly. Reports of biased calls are down 18% citywide. That's something, Andrea acknowledges. It's a start, Thomas agrees. Inside, the children gather around the kitchen island for ice cream. Olivia carefully distributes perfectly equal servings with scientific precision. Dad, she says when Thomas and Andrea return, remember when you said this wasn't just about us? I think I understand now. Thomas brushes her hair back gently. What do you understand? Sometimes the best way to create change is from the inside, whether it's a police department or a neighborhood. Thomas smiles at his daughter's insight. That's exactly right. The party continues into the evening, neighbors lingering, connections strengthening. Not a perfect community, but an improving one, moving slowly toward the ideal that safety comes not from suspicion, but from connection. As Thomas looks across his lawn at the diverse gathering, he recognizes the truth. True security comes not from keeping people out, but from bringing communities together. If you found value in Thomas and Andrea's journey, help spread their message by hitting that subscribe button right now. Each subscription empowers us to create more powerful stories that drive real change. Join our growing community of justice seekers. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and turn on notifications so you never miss our newest uploads. Your engagement helps these important stories reach those who need them most. And for exclusive early access to our most powerful content, consider becoming a Beat Stories member. Your support makes these transformative narratives possible.
What happened today isn't just a story. It's a reminder. Silence protects systems, but courage rewrites them. At Beat Stories, we don't just watch change, we document it. Subscribe for more real stories that challenge power and amplify truth.